Hello and welcome to you. A warm welcome indeed. Roy Noble here, and it's a great privilege and pleasure to be a Bevan Commissioner as we gather together for this auspicious occasion. Croeso cynnes i chi gyd, fel ni nawr wedi dod at ein gilydd fel casgliad arbennig am y diwrnod mae sy'n mynd i, wel, godi'r ysbryd, fi'n gobeithio. Something that will be uplifting. The showcase for the Adopt and Spread program, supporting adoption sites as they take Bevan exemplar innovation across Wales. Do you know, I've always been rather jealous of those who are innovators and creators in that kind of way. Does it come in a flash or does it gradually build in the mind? Somebody once told me that the world is divided into two kinds of people, those who do and those who get the credit for it. Actually, I believe that the world is divided into three kinds of people, those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who merely ask, what's happening then? The bystanders. You really need the movers and the shakers and the doers and the makers. And the dreamers, of course. But the dreamers need the doers to put the rivets in the dreams so that those dreams will come to fruition and take you to that extra mile. You will find that the extra mile is never crowded, really. They do say that Humphrey Davy and Edison in stages produced the electric light bulb. But I bet you the extra mile saw that the man who invented the meter made all the money, don't you think? Now then, the Bevan Commission has been leading the National Adopt and Spread program across Wales over the last 18 months, building on the work over the last 5 years with the Bevan exemplar innovators indeed. And 15 of the Bevan exemplar innovators were selected to share their innovative work with a new site. Over 50 new adoption sites have taken on one of these great innovations, let me tell you. And over 150 people have been involved in the adoption and spread of innovations right across Wales. Now, the work, you must remember, has taken place during COVID-19, and the participants have had to work exceptionally hard over and above the work they normally do, because all this is an extra for most of them. And they've had an impact on us all, and to ensure that we learn from the program and the ideas that they've actually come up with. Now then, there is a panel of project members with us today, and they participated in the Adopt and Spread program, and they have guests with them as well, so everyone is very, very welcome. And they will be ready to answer questions. And if you could put your questions in the chat box, the host will make sure that your question is asked, and hopefully that it is answered as well. So you're welcome again. So be prepared to be interested, to be enthralled, and to be inspired by what is on offer today. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Mwynhewch. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Bevan Commission Adopt and Spread Innovation Showcase. Back in 2015, we set off with the Bevan Exemplar programme, and we found that across the NHS in Wales, there were many examples of fantastic innovation that we could develop and we could spread and share them across the NHS. But there was nothing in place to support people to do these things. There was nothing in place to support people to spread their innovation, and there was nothing in place, critically in this instance, to support people to adopt the innovation. Because whilst innovation is great and fun to do, the process of adopting the innovation is also great and fun, but it's quite hard work. So we set about with the Adopt and Spread Innovation Programme to help the adopters to adopt the innovation, to adapt it and to improve it to context. When we set out, we had 150 exemplar projects, and we asked them who was interested in joining the programme. About 50 of them said yes, and we supported those to try and find adoption sites. Through a process of elimination and people demonstrating interest in an application, we whittled that down to 15 projects that started off the blocks almost 18 months ago from today. Over that period of time, a couple of them have dropped off because of COVID, but 13 projects will join us over the next couple of days with 40 or more adoption sites to share their experiences of taking part in the programme, but most importantly, their experiences of delivering and supporting innovation adoption across the NHS in Wales. I think it's been a fantastic journey. I've really enjoyed it in the part that I've played. I think that the people you will hear from are absolutely inspirational and formidable agents for change and innovation across the NHS in Wales. And I'm sure that you will enjoy listening to their stories, and hopefully you will ask them questions to learn from their experiences. So I will hand you over to your host, who will take you through the rest of the day. Have a really great
Hello, hi. Welcome to the session on using AI-enabled virtual assistants. My name is Lisa Love Gould, and I'm the Head of Therapies in Village Cancer Centre, and I've been asked to host this great session. This project looks at using AI-enabled virtual assistants for procedural anxiety to ensure that children and young people have support for their medical and psychological needs within their home, school, or local healthcare settings. So I'd just like to introduce you to your panel for today. We have, I'm not sure if Anne Johnson has managed to join us or not, but if we do, Anne is the lead paediatric clinical psychology in Aneurin Bevan UHB. We're also joined by Phoebe Borry, who is a psychology undergraduate student currently on placement year in Aneurin Bevan. Rhiannon Peters is an assistant psychologist, also in Aneurin Bevan, and Tom James is the assistant director of innovation for Aneurin Bevan. So without any further ado, I'm not sure if they're waving to you on screen. I can't see them. Hopefully they're giving you a wave as well. We'll have some time for some questions, but first of all, we're going to play a video about the project. Great. So we're going to start by asking our panel some questions, but please remember to ask any questions in the chat bar at the side and we can feed those questions into the panel as well. I'll keep an eye on that. So just to confirm, is Anne with us?
No, I think Anne's had some technical difficulties, and I think unfortunately Rhiannon's having the same. She can't hear at the moment.
Okay, all right. So what we'll do is we'll start with a question and see any members of the panel that are still with us that can potentially answer this question. So the first question is, why is this project important for children and young people within Gwent? So I don't know if Phoebe, you can maybe start on that.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to start on that one. So this project is obviously important for children and young people in Gwent, but it's not only those children, it's children in any health board really, because we know that invasive procedures and anxiety around those can get in the way of young people accessing the right medical care. And if they do receive care, but they experience an element of kind of trauma around it, then there's difficulties that they can experience with engaging in healthcare in the future. So it's really important that we get it right on the first time. And unfortunately, the professionals that we would, so the resources that we have, they're not, we don't have as much availability as we would like to reach as many people as possible. And it's really important that the parents of our young people have a key role in supporting confidence at home. But it's important as well that children have a sense of autonomy around their healthcare, and they can work by themselves and have a sense of independence. So it's really important that we put support in the hands of children and young people, and that they can access any support that they need, because sometimes procedures aren't nice and they will have kind of adverse impacts on children. And this will impact their willingness, again, to have healthcare support and monitoring and things like that. So it's really key to help children to be confident and to have the right strategies and information, which we're hoping we'll be able to provide through this tool. And we're hoping that the tool will be able to reach out on a broad scale to support the children and young people within Gwent, and then hopefully in the future other health boards as well. And using such a tiny resource as psychology to reach the children we really need is really important. So we're hoping that this tool can really benefit our children and young people.
That's great. Thanks, Phoebe. And I think, I would agree. I think reading through the brief beforehand and looking at your videos, I think what really struck me was the fact that this was something that would appeal to children and young people as well, isn't it? Access to digital technology, it's their life, isn't it, is digital. And I thought that was really good. And as you said, really sort of maximizing the resources you've got, because obviously resources are never as big as we'd like them to be. So I think, this is a great way of, having access to good information whenever they want as well, isn't it? It's not a 9 to 5. They can be when they have those queries. If they can't sleep, they can go and have a look, can't they? So I think it's really, really excellent. Please let me know if anyone else manages to join the chat, because I can't see who else is in. So please butt in if anyone else wants to add to that. The next question as well, about what some of the challenges that you faced actually developing this and using this, and how you had to adapt. Are you able to take that as well, Phoebe?
I'll see what I can do with that one. So one of the biggest challenges that we faced really was the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately that was unavoidable. And it was kind of a big challenge we had was not being able to go out and see our young people and our children and young people and actually interact with them in person, because this tool it's for them. So we wanted them to have as big a part of it as possible and get their feedback as we went along, but we just couldn't do that with all the restrictions in place. So we had to really quickly adapt to working online and communicating online with our young people, which it did work. So we're very lucky that we managed to keep this project going throughout the pandemic. And I would say that was probably one of the biggest challenges we had, but we learned how to overcome it, and we're on the other side now and nearing the finish point, hopefully.
Well, I think just to add to that, it would have been easy to knock it on the head and say that COVID has taken over. And I have to be honest, that a real credit to Rhiannon and Phoebe and to Anne, who've kept the project going and have found a different way to adapt to the new circumstances that COVID has provided. I mean, actually, children and young people are used to more and more interacting with online social media and technology, and actually so this plays into that, and especially given COVID and the increased use of technology and the increased use of engaging with each other online, which is exactly what we're doing now. I mean, this would have happened in person 18 months ago, and I've chaired Bevan sessions in the past that have been held in the Senate, held in university buildings. We're doing this online because we have to now, and actually so that just shows an ever increasing need and a context for projects like this, because actually and this may lead into some of the other questions here. What is it that makes a good innovation project? A good innovation project is where there is a clinical need that exists, and I think that the video and Phoebe have outlined that there's a very, very clear clinical need in this. The need is that children and young people need access to different types of services to solve the problem of procedural anxiety and to reduce, that burden on the healthcare system. But the local teams like Rhiannon and Phoebe. But actually, there's expertise elsewhere. We're using an AI platform that has been developed and proven elsewhere and applied it to a new set of circumstances where there is an existing clinical need. And for me, that is the most powerful ingredient of any innovation project, is that you're matching clinical need with expertise elsewhere. And actually, if you look at the national strategy, A Healthier Wales, it talks about upscaling local innovation. And I'm fortunate to have been involved in the Bevan Exemplar programme since its very inception. Actually, in even sort of co-designing it, the first cohort with Sean, actually, as mentioned in the video, back in 2015. But actually, the program has evolved. It's developed a whole range of different types of innovative projects, and so the natural progression of that was to develop an adopt and spread program that takes innovation from one place and adopts it elsewhere, because that's what the system needs. And so for me, it plays directly into A Healthier Wales, a long-term plan for integrated health and care in Wales. It plays directly into the fact that we have University Health Board designations in Wales, which are all about looking elsewhere for new solutions to the clinical needs that present us. And actually, automation, which in this case, ultimately this is an automation project. This is taking the knowledge that has been gained by clinicians like Rhiannon and Phoebe, and putting it into paper, and then putting it into an AI system that allows that knowledge to be spread much more quickly than it would do ever on a one-to-one basis. That's the basic principle here. We're trying to get knowledge pushed out and further at scale, and I think from that perspective, we've got a very, very clear need and a really powerful case for innovation here.
That's great. Thanks for that, Tom. There's some questions that have come up in the sidebar, which I'd quite like to go to before I carry on with any other questions. The first from Athena Jones in BCUA Health Board is, how has the application been communicated to patients? I don't know if either of you can take that one.
So I can offer a little bit of insight to this one. So we are still in the development phase at the moment. So the plans and the development, as we've been going on, we've been reaching out to children and young people in the health board. And Rhiannon did some work going into phlebotomy clinics and asking questions to the young people about what they would want this tool to do, what questions they would want them to answer. So kind of, how big is a needle? Will the needle hurt? Just getting the real insight to what children want to know. And some of them were things that we hadn't even thought of before. So we've done a lot of work with our patients and they're in the center of the care. We want it to be patient-centered. So we've worked as much as we can with them. And then we're hoping that once the tool has been developed, we will be able to take it into schools, we'll take it back into the phlebotomy clinics and test it and break it. And we want the children to have as much of an impact and much of a say into this tool as they can.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. And I think it's just remembering sort of what stage we're at with this project, isn't it? It's not sort of up and running with lots and lots of data behind it yet. But obviously that's our direction of travel. So can I just, would it then be something is there plans for it to be on your website that people can access, or how any plans yet on how they will be able to access that, or is that too early?
Well, I think for me, I think Phoebe may have lost connection there, but actually she's back. But I think for me, initially it's a web-based application, so people can access it via their own mobile devices, their own smart devices, etc., and that kind of takes the need in. And as long as we develop it way in terms of making sure that any information captured is in line with our information governance procedures. But actually, it's more of an advice service. It's more providing the right advice to the right people at the right time in a safe way, and actually integrating it with the health board informatics infrastructure presents some difficult problems, especially when you're engaging with the public. So if it's all based on the web, actually that makes it easier for everyone, to be honest. Do you want to add anything to that for you?
No, I think you've got it right. Hit the nail right on the head with that one, Tom. Yeah.
Perfect. And you touched on information governance and safety there. So that brings me on to the next question, which was asked by Gordon Clark from the Life Sciences Hub, which again, you may not have got onto yet, but may be part of the planning, which is what safeguarding measures were put in place if communicating with the children directly?
We're always, as a paediatric health psychology team, we're always working in terms of safeguarding and confidentiality. And we've had constant communication with the Bevan Commission and with our own teams within the health board in terms of safeguarding. So everything's been done to the book.
And this is all based. So to take my point about the automation of clinical knowledge, which is what this basically is. This is based on our procedural anxiety pathway. So this is a pre-agreed clinical pathway for how we engage with children and young people. So it's already had those safeguarding aspects kind of applied to it. It's just providing it through a different means, if you like, a more accessible means, and being able to provide it 24/7 as opposed to kind of the 9 to 5 or the shift patterns that the clinicians will be on, all of whom have busy lives and all of whom, and there aren't enough people to do this. So this is about providing that information to people when, at 24/7, and being able to provide it to as many people as need it, rather than, it being limited by the amount of human interaction that you can bring into it.
Okay, that's great. I think the next one is from Peter Roberts, director of Mars Limited. You may not have this. This might be something they need to come back to you with if they haven't got it on the at their fingertips, Peter. But the question is, what are the DNA rates for procedural anxiety? Has the project shared any data with the adoption sites and the potential impact on these rates? So was it that you were dealing with high procedural anxiety and subsequent DNAs, which is what instigated this project, I think is the question. Well,
we talked about clinical need, didn't we? There are DNA rates for clinical need, which are built into the policy or the procedural pathway that we have in place. And so that is the problem that we're trying to fix here. We've got information in that in terms of I don't have it to hand, and I'm not sure if the other guys do, or whether we should be kind of putting that information out or not. But the fact of the matter is that is the problem we're trying to fix here. We're trying to educate people to allow or to give them all the information that they need for them to feel comfortable to come in and have a procedure and to minimise the amount of anxiety. So if there weren't DNA rates, we probably wouldn't be doing this. I'm just looking at the problem, in terms of the adoption sites. I mean, I'm not sure, Phoebe, if you've got the information to hand, but for me, that's the problem we're trying to fix, is the fact that, and if we can minimize those DNA rates, then, we minimize the impact or the burden on what is a stretched team already.
Definitely. And I think coming at it from like a clinical lens, we know that procedural anxiety is one of the biggest barriers to young people receiving healthcare. And I myself actually have spent my placement year working primarily into the diabetes team. And I've seen firsthand how kind of phobia around needles can impact a young person's diabetes care. So this, as Tom was saying, the clinical need for this tool is there.
That's great. And I've just noticed Rhiannon, bless her, can't join, but she's managing to answer some of these questions in the sidebar as well. So with the DNA question, she said, DNA failed procedure rates are high within ABU Health Board for children and young people, particularly for MRI procedures. However, the main issue is extending the length of the appointment to accommodate procedural anxiety, which results in a rushed approach to getting children through, resulting in an increase in trauma through unhelpful strategies. There's also a significant number of children who don't receive vaccinations in primary care, obviously due to procedural anxiety. We are hoping to measure the impact of this tool on these figures in the future and share wildly. So if people have answered questions, it's worth going back through because there's some additional information coming into the sidebar there. Just looking, there was another question there. Just trying to scroll back. So question from Athena Jones in BCU Health Board again. She said, will the application be available for the Welsh population or just those that reside within the area of your health boards? And if just for those awaiting procedures in your health board, has any thought been made around making it available for the Welsh population or enabling other health boards to adapt the application for their area on the same platform?
So absolutely. I mean, this is already taking it from one health board area to another. I think this is the third health board area that is using this approach. So Valinda actually, Lisa was one, Cumtaf is another, and I and Bevan have also used it. So I think it's about proving the ability for it to be adopted. I think is one thing here. Is proving the clinical application of it is another. So after that is the test of whether the adopt and spread program really works then, because if we can prove that it works, that's one step, but it's how do we get that used across other health boards really, and really what the kind of, again coming back to that, what is the clinical need that the adopt and spread program is trying to fix, is the fact that innovation hasn't traditionally traveled well. So if you can create a national system that allows for innovation to be fed in and to be adopted elsewhere, the program is working to its best effect, I would say then. But actually, I mean, one thing we did explore at the start, but unfortunately it just wasn't quite feasible, just with the amount of heavy lifting that had to be done was could we use it for COVID vaccinations? Because actually, if you think about and people who were scared of having their COVID vaccination for a whole host of reasons, including misinformation, including kind of entrenched views, including just procedural anxiety. If we were able to prove this concept now and apply it, if there was another global pandemic which required a mass vaccination program, and we were able to apply this sort of capability and capacity, this could have global impact really, beyond the clinical area that we're trying to fix it in now. So yes, is that there's a vast amount of scale potential here. So this is, I guess, why it's such an exciting project to be part of.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, Rhiannon's been in the sidebar talking about the application, and they was hope for it to be voice activated function, but currently the technology isn't available to recognise the Welsh language, but they're hoping to provide proof of concept to the tool within Gwent to be spread more widely in future. So just backing up what you just said there, Tom. Okay, so I'm just going back to some questions here, and this one really is for you, Tom. I think, what would you say, as in your role as Assistant Director of Innovation, what have you learned from adopting this project idea?
Adopting innovation sounds easier than it actually is, and actually there was a really interesting, I think it was a Health Foundation or King's Fund paper, that whenever you adopt innovation, you're not really adopting innovation, you're starting a new project based on learning elsewhere, but you're having to apply that project within different local circumstances and a different operating environment. So that's the first thing we learn really, is that innovation, there are reasons that innovation don't travel. And so, again, we come back to adopt and spread program is one of the mechanisms in which we can kind of create a layer, whereby projects can go, because we have natural barriers to innovation in the way that the NHS has been set up in Wales, because we are health boards that work on geographical areas, and we provide population health for those geographical areas, except in some specialised circumstances. What it means is there are natural kind of geographical boundaries for innovation. So unless people are kind of really want to kind of work with sites elsewhere, they may not have a need to. So that's one. I think the other is getting other people on board, other enabling people on board within the health board, and getting an informatics team on board and working with industry partners to do different or to apply it in a different way. And so that was, industry partner dropped out sort of early on, and we did have to kind of look at again at how we might get another industry partner, or what our options are for other industry partners to kind of do the coding around this work, because that's a very specialized skill in itself. And actually doing that without a kind of an unlimited budget is difficult. But actually, I think, the fact that the team have adapted so well to the COVID was one of the biggest challenges, because it just threw everything. It threw the way in which we provided our services. It threw the kind of focus of the health board. And in some respects, it did throw the focus of the health board away from innovation, to kind of keeping the lights on and fighting the very, very immediate fires and A&E departments that were full. So, and quite rightly so. I mean, that had to be the focus. So trying to keep and I think it's a testament again to the team. I'm sorry to keep rehearsing it, but the team being able to adapt to those circumstances and keep it kind of running on a skeleton crew, if you like, whilst they're kind of adapting to COVID, I think was really important. So those are some of the key challenges, I think, system level challenges. I mean, Phoebe, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
I can't really think of anything. I think that was all, right there. In terms of adapting to COVID, I think the team and kind of everyone we've worked with have done a really good job at kind of keeping this within our eye line and making sure that we don't drop it, because it is something that is so important.
Yeah, and I think whilst I completely agree with, sort of the hard task and credit to you all to keep this going through COVID times, I think you're probably really well poised now, aren't you, to actually take a project where everyone has become much more digitally enabled through COVID, much more used to using digital platforms, whether it's consultations or apps or whatever it is, that actually you're now really well poised to go with this with a population that's probably more ready for it than maybe they would have been 15 months ago. So I think that's really exciting as well. Okay. Sorry,
Lisa, that's a really good point. And how we perhaps repackage this project slightly, given NHS recovery, big post-COVID recovery. I think that's probably a learning point for us to take back. About how we're going to sort of cope with the backlog. How and this is a way for us to do that. Automation is a way for us to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so there was a decision, I believe, to bring this project into a larger project on AI in the health board. You may have touched on this a little bit already, but is there anything else you wanted to tell us about this and why that was important?
So there is a piece of work ongoing within the health board to look at how we can take a more systematic approach to AI projects in the future. And I think that comes through using some of the existing literature that is out there already, particularly the stuff that's been done over the border actually by the Academic Health Science Networks and NHSX, so NHS England, the digital arm. And so I think there's some further work to be done really in terms of creating like a framework for AI projects, so that they can interact with the health board's information architecture, so that they are safe, so that they are based on clinical evidence, and and we can get them over the line, perhaps a bit more easily. I think that's a piece of work that we need as a nation. It's not just as a health board. I think Wales needs that piece of work, because there's huge amounts of interest in AI, not just from specialist areas to looking at looking at X-ray results via AI, but it's also about providing information in a more systematic way, and being able to provide that information in a more engaging way that especially pulls into, that talks to the fact that people are more digitally focused and more digitally reliant nowadays. So for me, there is that big piece of work that needs to be done, and I hope I don't hope, but I know that the learning that we've taken from this project will be fed into that wider piece of work.
Okay, that's great. Right, so just a final question before we go to another video, actually. This one's for you, Phoebe, predominantly, but anyone else can chip in. I think obviously it's really exciting. You're a student, you're the future of psychology. So how would you like the product of your project to adapt in the future?
Yeah, so with this product, in the original ideas, we had these really grand plans, and we were after this bright and colourful and interactive and voice-activated tool. However, unfortunately, we quickly came to realise that the current technology that we could procure, unfortunately, didn't have these functions. So the tool that we're currently developing is, as we've said, is a proof of concept, but we are hopeful that in the future, we will be able to access the technology in order to develop the tool further. So this proof of concept that we're developing around procedural anxiety in terms of children with inoculations and phlebotomy, and we're really hoping that in the future we would love to see the tool being expanded to cover a wider range of procedures. So kind of what we've mentioned already about MRIs and X-rays, and just having a more universal tool. And in terms of adapting in the future, so this kind of proof of concept, it requires the questions to be manually typed into a chat box. And this will work well for older children who have kind of a stronger grasp of the English language and will be able to interact with the tool without an adult. However, for younger children, such as kind of primary age children who this tool is aimed at, they may have to have an adult, a parent, type into the chatbot instead. And ideally, we would like the tool to be kind of upgraded to be voice activated, as this would allow it to be more accessible across the development of young people and increase their independence and their sense of ownership for their healthcare. And as I've mentioned, the tool is aimed at kind of primary school age children, because we know that older children, they're more likely to be able to access appropriate content elsewhere. So it's vital that we kind of increase the accessibility and make it easier for those with less developed language skills. But despite this, the current tool will in no doubt be of great value to young people with procedural anxiety, as they'll still be able to gain kind of an increased awareness of the procedures and hopefully make them more likely to engage and lessen their anxiety. We're also hoping for the tool to include kind of bright colours and graphics, as we know this helps with the engagement of this type of material. And this is something that we hope to develop further in the future and kind of make the tool more developmentally appropriate again. Because we know that children learn a lot from play, so we want the tool to be as engaging as possible to encourage the interactions. But the current tool, the current proof of concept we're developing, will still be able to provide the information and the self-help resources that we want it to. So it will still be really valuable. And I know we've touched on briefly already about kind of how the tool will be accessed. So at the moment, it will be accessed via an internet browser. And we have, as we've spoken about already, we've tapped into this increased access to the internet and to technology, and the increased consumption of it in younger people. And in the future, we would really like to develop this tool into an app, because we know that this is on the children's wavelength. This is something they use every single day. And then it can be kind of downloaded onto tablets and mobile phones, and the children are more likely to use it. And it's really important that we use the avenues that they're already confident in. But still, the browser will be really helpful, and everything that we want the tool to do in terms of providing the information that they need kind of 24/7, being able to respond to their questions in real time with kind of media and psychological coping strategies, it'll still be able to do that, and it will still help to foster a sense of ownership and autonomy for the children.
That's great. Thanks, Phoebe. Lots to do then. Very exciting times ahead.
Lots to come in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm a speech and language therapist by trade, and I think certainly the voice activation for anyone with literacy and language problems, I think would be a big win, wouldn't it? As well as, making sure it's accessible as an app as well. So it's great to hear that those sort of developments are ongoing. So I'm just checking, are there any other questions? I can't see anything else in the sidebar that I've missed, or is there anything that our panel want to add before we move on to the next section? Taking that as a no. So, okay, great. So Natasha, if you are listening, if you could play the next video, that would be great. Okay. Right, so I've got a few more questions, but please keep these questions coming. I can see someone has just put that one in the sidebar, so I'll start with Ross. So we've got Ross McLeish from the Research Innovation, is a Research Innovation facilitator at Velindre. And the question is, can the assistant recognise and respond in Welsh language, or will it in future? I think we did have something alluding to that earlier, but if someone can just respond to that question again, that would be
I think we said no, didn't we, Phoebe, at the moment? But that is, we would like it to do that in the future.
Yeah, we're hoping in the future it will be able to, because again, it will help increase accessibility. But I think at the moment the technology that we have available just isn't quite there. So we're hoping in the future, when we continue to adapt this project, hopefully, fingers crossed.
That's great. Thank you. So thinking then about what's next, really. So I don't mind who takes this if you want to have a go, but what's next for the projects in your health board for the AI-enabled virtual assistant? Tom, I think you did allude to this a little bit earlier, but is there anything anyone wanted to add to that about what's next for AI in the health board?
Well, yeah, we did talk about that a bit already. You know, it's to develop a systematic and common approach to, and a framework, I guess, and a checklist for clinicians who want to become involved or want to undertake AI projects, to understand how they fit with the digital strategy of the health board. What's the clinical need? What's the expertise that we're getting from elsewhere? What are the information governance? What are the what are the information governance requirements, if you like? What are the restrictions? What are the ethics and safety, potential patient safety issues that we may face as a result of that? Because this is where I think, certainly some of the learning that we've had from this project is that if we're basing the AI on a pre-agreed pathway, procedural anxiety pathway that has been clinically signed off, that is based on clinical evidence, you're already part of the way there. The digital side of things is more difficult, and actually, we've got over another hurdle by using a web-based platform, which is kind of accessible to everyone, that doesn't take information from patients. It just provides information to patients. It could provide, Phoebe may know this better than me. It may be able to kind of, highlight a particular, or search for kind of keywords that highlight particular areas of worry or where we may have to kind of, kick off a referral, if you like, but actually kind of keeping them off the health board's informatics infrastructure is probably an easier way to do it. Do you want to add anything to that from a clinical perspective, Phoebe?
Yeah, I think kind of, especially in terms of the current project, our next plans are just to see whether it works really and how effective it is, and to take it out into schools and phlebotomy clinics, as I've said, and test it and break it, and interact again with the children and young people, because it is for them and we do need their input. And we're hoping then, once the tool has been tested and it's complete, we can go on to evaluate it and finalize it, and then have our completed proof of concept. And then after that, once the appropriate technology is available, we can do all of these things that I've mentioned previously that we want to do, and expand it again to cover a wider range of medical procedures, allowing a much wider range of young people to develop their independence and their ownership over their care.
That's great. Thanks both. And I think you talked about lots of different systems and processes there. And I've just seen the question in the sidebar from Athena Jones in BCU. She said, within the Adoption and Spread Masterclass, they mentioned that those within the programme have access to support. And she's asking what support you've had and that you've accessed to get the project to this stage.
Well, I know that the Adopt and Spread programs have kind of built-in support functions, if you like, so different online tools, different online sessions, and I think Rhiannon has attended a few of those. So it's about it's about recognizing that people are part of a bigger community of adopters and spreaders, if you like. It's about, you know, understanding what some of the kind of key needs are for the delegates of the program, if you like, for the people who are or the participants, I should say. So having, and I think this is where having people, probably like people like myself in the health board, who can understand the kind of financial and some of the governance and some of the digital, some of the wider implications, if you like, beyond the kind of just the clinical area, is helpful. So this kind of, I guess you might put it as a multidisciplinary team inside of the health board who've been able to kind of support the adoption of the project. So you've got central support, if you like, rather than just being a clinical team, you know, in a, because you know, whilst you know the NHS in Wales is a fraction of the size of the English system, we're still 80,000 people. You know, the NHS is huge, and actually, you know, an Ira and Bevan Health Board is huge. You know, we've nearly 16,000 people, and you include GPs and dentists. So it's about understanding, you know, where the project sits within the kind of wider context of where the health board is trying to go. And I think linking it with, the priorities of the organisation is important, and the digital strategy, and obviously making it fall in line with, you know, whatever the procurement and the financial guidelines are. So it doesn't, you know, bump against some of the internal barriers that we have, you know, not just within the NHS but within big organisations more generally.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, Tom, and I think you're getting a real team approach. You know, when you were talking about the coding as well. So I think there's that internal and external wider teams that are really key, aren't they, to getting any projects off the ground. And that support, certainly from you as well, is really clear to see. Rhiannon's also come in the sidebar and said that as clinicians, we have accessed fantastic support from the programme to be able to adapt and be flexible with the project when things felt challenging. The networking days were a great opportunity to learn from others and plan the next steps. When they got stuck with how to move forward, the team were always supportive in offering ideas and checking in on how things are progressing. So there's obviously great levels of support throughout this, which is really.
And I think just to add to that, Joe and the team and Rupa were really supportive, and I think taking a bit of a flexible approach to it, because sometimes these projects are not that easy, you know, against a busy day job. Forget the busy day job. I mean, a global pandemic is one of the things that will derail a project like this, and actually being able to flex it and keep it running, you know, as a minimum, so that we're ready to kind of kick it back into life when the organisational circumstances are more kind of conducive to it, I think is really, really important. So Bevan flexibility in that is good, and so us being able to kind of roll the project money into this financial year instead, because just really helped. It kept the project going. Really, it means that we can kick on now under a kind of a new light, if you want to put it that way, because we're looking at NHS recovery. We're looking at these things are going to be more and more important. So it's good to be able to have had that flexibility from the programme.
That's great. So I like this question. What would you say to the highly enthusiastic clinicians who want to make this happen?
So for me, it's the big thing that I've learned through the Bevan Exemplar programme, through a whole range of innovation projects over the last 6-7 years, is make sure you've got that, so I'm coming back to where I started really, is what is the problem that you're trying to fix and how can you fix it, and get some real perspective from people elsewhere, whether it be universities, whether it be industry, whether it be from government or different people, about what the solution is, because, and I include the patient in that really, in terms of, because actually sometimes, and I think in health sometimes we think we know what the answer is, but we haven't necessarily looked as far and as wide as we should do in terms of what the potential solution might be. We maybe jump to the first solution that we find. And so for me, it's about get a load of different perspectives in there about how else you can fix these problems, or what the solutions are going to be, and be willing to kind of roll with it, be willing to adapt, and be open to taking support from other places and finding where those other places are. I don't know, Phoebe, if you've got any more reflections on that.
I think I would kind of echo what you were saying about be willing to adapt, be willing to be flexible, because you're guaranteed to hit some bumps in the road. I mean, we've hit so many with COVID and everything, and it's bound to happen. But if the project that you're working on, if you're passionate about it, if it's going to have this amazing clinical impact, which I'm sure all of the projects will have, then you've just got to keep plowing through these bumps, because it will be worth it in the end. I mean, this tool that we're developing, it's going to have an amazing impact on the lives of our young people.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got enthusiastic clinicians, we've got a great idea. What do we say to the finance director or chief executive to convince them of the importance of the service?
So I think it's how you can link it back to healthcare value, really. How can you articulate the benefits of this project or any innovation project in terms of patient outcomes, patient experience, and resource efficiency? So what's the difference going to be made to the what happens to the patient? How are they going to be made better as a result of it? How is their experience of the system going to be made better? How is it going to save clinician time, money, and also patient time as well? So I think being able to articulate the benefits along through those lines, because value, healthcare value is a term that we're hearing more and more and more in Wales now. And I and Bevan are fortunate to host the National Value Programme for health, and actually, off the back of that work, we've established now a value in healthcare intensive learning academy, which is being run through the Hub Swans University and Cardiff, I believe, but also an innovation and transformation intensive learning academy, which I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the development of. So actually, innovation is nothing without value. What is the difference that is made? Because a great idea is a great idea, but if it only sits in one person's head, then it's only an idea. So how can you turn that into something that adds value for the patient and for the organisation? And I think off the back of that, you've got usually got quite a powerful project.
That's great, thank you. Okay, my final question at this point, unless there's anything else that's going to come up in the chat bar, is how you are going to make sure that the lessons learnt inform national strategy and approach in Wales. And again, that's been something that has been highlighted by some of our guests in the chat bar about that keenness, that this not to be, just an Ira and Bevan UHB resource and project, that we really do adopt and spread as this event's all about.
Well, I think the evaluation of the project is key. Come back to what's the difference that this will have made at the end of it, and how, what are the lessons that we've learned about adopting it from because again, we've taken this functionality, this capacity, this capability from elsewhere, and we're applying it here. And what are the lessons that we've learned about applying something that's worked elsewhere to a new site? And I think how well the overall evaluation of the program can set out those benefits, if you like, can set out those and create a really compelling case for change in terms of what is the legacy of the Adopt and Spread program. So what is we've done all these projects, 53 projects I think it was. What do we learn from doing that, and how can we create something new that scales up again from what we've all been trying to do together?
Struggling to find my mute button then. See, I was doing so well and hovered away from it for a second. Rhiannon, or in the sidebar, or Phoebe, was there anything else to add to that?
I don't think so, really. But yeah, just echoing the kind of evaluation and just showing how important it is and how much it can benefit the children and young people in our service, and then kind of distributing our findings and sharing what we've learned with other health boards and other professionals.
That's great, thank you. Okay, so I don't have any more questions. So I don't know if anyone else has anything else or anything else you wanted to add before I conclude. Is anything Tom or Phoebe wanted to add?
No. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the project today, and again, so credit to Phoebe and Rhiannon who've managed to keep it going during a difficult time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think just in conclusion, from me really, I think what's really struck me is that, listening to all the things that you've both brought through into this, as well as looking at the project itself, I think the fact that there was an existing and there is a procedural anxiety pathway, you've looked at how you can maximize those limited specialist resources. You wanted something timely that was in a medium that was accessible and attractive to children and young people, and that's what you've got. Obviously there's lots ongoing, lots of developments planned. You're at those sort of testing and adoption stages still, but I think the other lovely thing is the real team approach that's come through strongly here, not just within the Aneurin Bevan Health Board but beyond, and the support that Bevan have managed to give this project, as they do all Bevan exemplar projects. And I think, as you said, Tom, it's about patient experience, patient outcomes, and resource and efficiency. I wrote that down. It has to add value, as you said, for the patient and the organisation, and I think this is something that really clearly does. So I just wanted to say thank you to the panel. Well done, Phoebe, as a student. You've carried the psychology department really well there with Rhiannon, bless her, in the sidebar. Technology, we're talking about technology and sometimes it lets us down. So congratulations to you all on the project, but also managing to cope with that. Thank you, Rhiannon, for joining in the sidebar as you could. Thank you to our guests, great questions, because obviously it's nothing if it's just us talking. So thank you for participating, and I hope you found it very beneficial. I've just been reminded in the sidebar from Natasha that you can visit the booths for further conversation and networking. So if you go back to your original registration page, apparently in the AirMeet session where the sessions are, there's booths at the top. So I think Tom and Phoebe and hopefully Rhiannon are going to join that as well. So they'll be there if there's any other questions you've thought of. Yes, and that will be that. But thank you for your time. I believe that is it, and we can go on to the next thing or have a cup of tea. So thanks for your time and attention. Nice to see you and hear more about this project.
Thank you for having us, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.